Nyalche Chembur Toto Ningmi Shang, Donen Manum Chembur, Nyalcheta, Lankara Dargam Santo, Shermat, Tumba Turje Chanla Kivsham Sar, Nishan Rover Zerni Jangamsa, Jabur Tukishan, Yelaman, Jimmy Panzo Jala, Soran, Gonjut Tobam for Shinjilo, Gonjut Tobam for Shinjilo, Gonjut Tobam for Shinjilo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate Bodhicitta before teaching.
Now, let us continue our study of the Shurangama Sutra. As we discussed earlier in the Shurangama Sutra, if we wish to leave the Sravaka path and practice the Mahayana Bodhicitta, we must first understand two decisive principles. We have already covered the first decisive principle. Ultimately, as I mentioned at the end of yesterday's teaching, it means that we need to practice calm abiding and ultimately recognize the nature of the mind through profound insight. This is just like the analogy of water. We must first allow our minds to settle and become calm. This is indeed very important. We know it is important, but because we are ordinary sentient beings, sometimes even though we know it clearly, in that state of knowing, we often set many things aside and simply fail to practice them. It is possible that until the moment of death, we still haven't practiced well. This is certainly a possibility, but regardless, knowing is still better than not knowing. Although in our practice, for example, circumambulating, chanting sutras, prostrating, and doing the preliminary practices, these acts generate immense merit. But ultimately, we still need to meditate. Through meditation, you can take your conceptual thoughts and slowly, gradually clarify them. Once conceptual thoughts are slowly peeled away, the original face of the mind can be revealed. At that moment you must recognize it. At that time all afflictions can be entirely dispelled. This is crucial. Yesterday in the first important decisive principle, we already discussed this issue. Actually, the reasoning explained at the end of yesterday's teaching is just like observing the nature of mind in the Great Perfection. In fact, the principles taught in the Great Perfection and the principles taught here can be said to be completely the same. It is just that in Tantric teachings they directly point out this inconceivable luminous mind. What is that sound? What? A mobile phone. Some people are really something else. They don't hand in their phones now, but they still bring them to class when the teaching begins. It's from the monk's side, right? Therefore, this kind of practice in the Great Perfection relies on such a direct pointing out method to recognize it. In reality, these two principles are almost entirely identical. So after we study the Shurangama Sutra this time, actually many of the principles within it correspond to the pith instructions taught in the Vajrayana. We can say they are completely the same. On the surface, the so-called Shurangama Sutra is a sutra of the exoteric tradition. However, regarding the recognition of the nature of the mind, these profound instructions are truly supreme. Sometimes when I am preparing for the class myself, or when I am reading it, I think to myself, we are not studying it in extreme detail this time. If there is a chance in the future, could we take the Shurangama Sutra and study it very systematically once again? Perhaps read and explain it more broadly than we are doing now. I have this thought, but realistically this is very difficult to achieve. As you all know, each of our lives is so brief. If we can successfully complete the transmission of this teaching this time, that will be something to be incredibly joyous about. Perhaps each of us has this feeling. After studying the Shurangama Sutra, in many aspects we should have a new understanding of our own practice. On one hand, we feel that recognizing the mind is not that simple. Some people say, oh, just rest in the nature of the mind. Ah, I have become enlightened, and similar claims. This is indeed quite ridiculous. On the other hand, some people think that the so-called nature of the mind is absolutely impossible to recognize. This view is also absurd. The truth is, as long as we put in the effort and practice diligently, we will gain some realization of our own mind. But this realization is not that simple. Therefore, after studying the Shurangama Sutra, many people should have new insights. Moreover, everyone knows why this sutra has been so highly valued in the Han region throughout history. This level of reverence reached its peak during a certain period, especially in the Tang dynasty. Later, perhaps due to the passage of time and various other reasons, nowadays the Shurangama Sutra is in a somewhat dormant state. If we can complete this teaching perfectly this time, I think there are hundreds of people here who would be capable of teaching the Shurangama Sutra. Every day when I go to listen, not to mention the rest of our Sangha, even among those who review the teachings here at night, basically, their general understanding of the Shurangama Sutra's doctrine is quite clear. Whether it's through their debates, mutual discussions, or their own teaching reviews and reflections, looking at it from all angles, the level of understanding of many people is quite good. Therefore, when everyone is teaching, please make sure to understand it clearly and do not forget it later. For some parts you need to take notes. By doing so, I think there will definitely be opportunities in the future. Today we will discuss the second principle. If you are resolved to become fully awakened, you must courageously dedicate yourself to practice in accord with the Bodhisattva vehicle. You must decisively let go of everything that has conditioned attributes. It mentions here, if we want to generate the Mahayana Bodhicitta, what is the second decisive principle? The Buddha tells Ananda, if you wish to truly generate the supreme and unsurpassed bodhicitta, then within the Mahayana, which is the bodhisattva vehicle, you must generate great courage and not be too lazy. It shouldn't be like, I am here, for example in Larungar, as long as I have money from chanting, it's fine. As long as I have food, it's fine. As long as I can survive here, that's enough. If you are in a dazed and muddled state every day, then this does not count as great joyous effort. The true mind of our Mahayana Bodhisattvas is like a beautiful woman with her hair on fire. There is an extreme sense of urgency. To save sentient beings, you must have a sense of responsibility. You yourself must want to save them. Courageously dedicate yourself to practice in accord with the Bodhisattva vehicle. This is something I wonder if many of our practitioners have. Sometimes, after listening to the teachings, if your mind changes, it shows that the doctrine of the teachings is truly beneficial to you and that you have received blessings. Sometimes what we call blessings is actually a transformation of your mind stream. For instance, if I receive the blessings of the yidam, then this spiritual resonance with the yidam causes your practice to change for the better. Or if you receive the blessings of the Guru, it is not that the Guru gives you an apple and you say, wow, this is delicious. I have received the Guru's blessings. Actually, this is not necessarily the Guru's blessing. The true blessing of the Guru is this. Originally you had a very bad temper or nature, and then through listening to the teachings or through his blessings, your mind changes immediately. For some, the spiritual resonance is very strong, and there is a real transformation within the Bodhisattva vehicle. For others, nothing happens at all. They are the same today, and they will be exactly the same next year. Or even after a year or so, they slowly regress. There is no progress at all. This is very pitiful. So if you truly wish to learn the Mahayana teachings, you must have a courageous mind on the Bodhisattva path. You must decisively let go of everything that has conditioned attributes. You must discard the conditioned, which in Tibetan is described as inherent existence. It is translated as the attributes of inherent existence. Regardless of which tenet system of the realists it is, whether regarding spiritual attainments or afflictions, and many other things, they view them from the perspective of inherent existence. Actually, this is unreasonable, just like what is stated in some other Mahayana sutras and shastras. All phenomena are like a dream and an illusion. Although we need joyous effort when seeking awakening, this is not in accordance with the Sravaka vehicle's view of seeking it as something inherently real. Therefore you must decisively discard these conditions substantially existent or truly existent. You must cut off all these inherently real attributes. Carefully examine the source of your afflictions, which since time without beginning have created your karma and nurtured its growth. Who is it that creates this karma and undergoes retribution? As for how we should be courageous and diligent, first we should carefully and thoroughly examine and contemplate. How do we examine? We look at the very nature of afflictions. In the second decisive principle, we mainly talk about using wisdom to observe the essence of afflictions. For example, as the Tattva Siddhi Sastra in the Han region also says, among the 84,000 Dharma teachings, all wisdom serves to eliminate ignorance. For all our 84,000 Dharma gates, actually in the final analysis, they are all for severing afflictions. In that case we must first observe the nature of afflictions. What is it like? Since time without beginning, they have created your karma and nurtured its growth. Since time without beginning, first it is the ignorance that does not know the true reality of phenomena, which acts as the initiator of karma. Then once there is ignorance, it continuously becomes a habit, continuously cycles, and then produces craving, grasping, consciousness, and so forth. A whole series of phenomena within the 12 links of dependent origination arise continuously one after another, constantly being generated. After this, who is it that creates this karma and undergoes retribution? Ultimately in samsara, who goes to create karma, who acts, and who finally experiences the results. For example, the 6 consciousnesses create karma, and then the karma created by them is continuously deposited on the alaya, stored within the 8th consciousness, and later gradually experienced. Thus we know that the root of afflictions, actually since time without beginning, has been continuously flowing within our mind stream as such a special dependent condition. Therefore you must first know what afflictions actually are, what the function of afflictions is, and what the result of afflictions is. You must observe them one by one. The Buddha tells Ananda, if during your quest for full awakening, Ananda, you do not examine and contemplate the sources of affliction, you will not be able to understand the illusory and distorted nature of the perceiving faculties and their objects. At what point did you become so disoriented? If you do not know that, how can you expect to subdue your afflictions and aspire to becoming a Buddha? The Buddha once again tells Venerable Ananda, now he is not criticizing him. Usually after Ananda cries, the Buddha stops criticizing him for a long time. Then, after some time passes, he starts criticizing him again, and Ananda cries once more. Now it seems the relationship between the Buddha and Ananda is a bit better. He has been teaching Ananda some rather pleasant dharma. Ananda is also quite happy. Then the Buddha tells Ananda, if you truly wish to practice awakening properly, if you want to practice awakening, if you do not examine, if you do not carefully observe the root of afflictions, then you will fundamentally be unable to understand the illusory 6 sense faculties and the illusory 6 sense objects. Observing afflictions is very important. If we do not observe, we will not know at all that everything arises from illusion. Currently, our conventional truth is entirely the intertwining of the object and the subject. Ultimately, this produces the various confused appearances of the vessel world and the sentient world. But if we do not observe our afflictions, we won't know at all where these appearances of the 6 sense objects and 6 spheres, where these appearances became inverted. Where did they turn black into white? What kind of confusion is it, and where is it? We won't know at all. Everyone knows that the Mahayanavatara at the very beginning says, for a practitioner who wishes to escape the bitter ocean of samsara, if you wish to attain supreme awakening, you must first observe afflictions. Then regarding the essence of afflictions, Different philosophical schools hold different views, because we must recognize afflictions as dreamlike and illusory. As to what this dreamlike and illusory nature is, the various schools begin to have different perspectives. Therefore the Mahayanavatara states, those who wish to escape samsara, those who wish to attain Buddhahood, you must recognize afflictions. So it is the same for all of us sitting here today. I think many people probably want to either struggle against afflictions, recognize afflictions, or eradicate afflictions. Many people should be thinking this way, otherwise there is no real point in coming here. There's no point in staying here. You see, when we first started studying the Shurangama Sutra, in my memory, it seems there were over 70,000 people. In 2019, there were quite a lot of people at the time. Now look at it. Due to various causes and conditions, they are no longer here. Now we only have these few people left. If even these people do not go and seek out their afflictions, it is indeed quite a pity. Because when we try to find the root of our afflictions, Mara the evil one and his retinue will definitely not be happy. They will use all sorts of methods, so that perhaps not a single person will search for the root of afflictions. Otherwise it would be harmful to them. Therefore, no matter what, everyone must go and seek the root of afflictions. Otherwise, if you want to become a Buddha, there is no way to save sentient beings. How can a person with deep and heavy afflictions save sentient beings? A person with deep and heavy afflictions, how can they escape the samsara of the three realms? It is impossible. So where did the inversion happen? If the location of the afflictions, the root of the afflictions, if we do not know them, then how can we possibly subdue them? For example, if we want to find the enemy, if we want to annihilate the enemy, we must first know where the enemy resides, his dwelling place, his very nature, and his capabilities. As for afflictions, we must recognize them. Who are they exactly? For instance, anger. What is it really like? Where is it? What shape does it have? What is it most afraid of? By what method can we uproot it? This is the most important thing. But we worldly people have no idea where it resides, nor do we care about it. Some even feel that, when I generate attachment, I am a hero, I am very formidable. Look at me, I am so special. When it's time to fight, having anger is great. And when they generate attachment, they think, wow, it's great. A life with love is especially wonderful. Worldly people do not know the harmfulness of afflictions, but we practitioners should know. So if we do not continue to subdue our afflictions, then where will the state of a perfectly awakened Tathagata come from? It is absolutely impossible. A Tathagata has severed all cognitive obscurations and afflictive obscurations, and has actualized omniscient wisdom regarding all phenomena, and wisdom realizing the ultimate nature, becoming such a venerable being of wisdom. Here it speaks of afflictions, and below it goes on to explain that fundamentally, afflictions are just like space. These principles will all be explained. The Buddha tells Ananda again, Ananda, consider some worldly person who wishes to untie a knot. If he cannot see the knot, how will he know how to untie it? Just like in our world, if a person wants to untie a knot that someone else has tied, in that case, if your eyes have not even seen the knot that was tied, then how can you untie it? It's impossible. You might say someone is tied up over there, and you need to untie him. But if you haven't even seen where this person actually is, then how could you possibly accomplish such a task? It is absolutely impossible. You have never heard of space being broken into parts. Why? Space has no shape or form, therefore it can neither be divided nor put together again. He says, but space is different. Actually, afflictions and space are the same in essence. This also implies such a meaning. We have never heard of space being taken by something else and being broken into parts, torn open, ripped apart, or destroyed. Space cannot be chopped away by an axe or burned by fire. When the Uttara Tantra Shastra is taught, it often uses the analogy of whether space can be burned by fire. Can space be dyed with colors? Can space be destroyed by any weapon? Are there such things? No one has ever heard of these things. Why? Because space has no form, shape, or appearance whatsoever. Since it has none, then how can there be any knots to untie? Or how can there be any new changes to space? How could any changes occur to it? This is an impossible thing. Next it says, but now your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind are like conspirators who have introduced thieves into your house. Even I find it hard to read. To plunder your valuables. He is saying here, you're presently manifesting 6 sense faculties of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. These 6 faculties are like 6 conspirators, that is, mediators or introducers for thieves, meaning they act as a kind of mediator or introducer who can bring in thieves from the outside. Then they steal or plunder the most precious valuables in your own house. Why is it said this way? Because once we have the 6 sense faculties, they are like a bad person. These 6 bad people conspire with other external enemies and thieves. The thieves mentioned here actually refer to the external 6 sense objects, form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental phenomena. These are the outer thieves. The 6 root afflictions, such as attachment, anger, and ignorance, are the inner thieves. This is also explained in some commentaries. The meaning is that since we have the mediators of the 6 faculties, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, what do they attract? The external 6 sense objects and the internal 6 afflictions. After that, the afflictions and the external 6 sense objects, along with the internal 6 faculties, when they all conspire together, then the treasures in our own house within our mind stream, the wish-fulfilling jewel-like treasures of the Tathagata Garbha, are completely plundered, entirely looted, leaving nothing behind. Because we ordinary beings now, although we possess the Tathagata Garbha, which is like a wish-fulfilling jewel, but because of the thieves of the 6 faculties, along with the external 6 sense objects and afflictions, through their intertwining and joint actions, the Tathagata Garbha, which is like a precious jewel within our mind stream, cannot manifest. Right now we are very poor. Although we have such treasure in our house, it has been controlled by them. When we will get it back we do not know. When it is returned we will be wealthy again. But for the time being, even though we ourselves possess such a family treasure, we have no right to enjoy it, so to speak. These inner and outer thieves and enemies have taken control. Master Yuan Ying and Master Jiao Guang said that comparing the 6 sense objects to thieves is somewhat unreasonable, because they are insentient phenomena. That is what they said. But actually, since this is just an analogy, they do not necessarily have to be sentient phenomena. In fact, from the perspective of the faculties themselves, the 6 faculties are also insentient. Truly, if we speak according to the exoteric view, before consciousness intervenes, our eye faculty, ear faculty, and nose faculty are all insentient phenomena. Therefore, this is just an analogy used here. It is not necessarily the case that sense objects like form, sound, smell, and taste must all possess life. It is not always so. Actually, I also mentioned this yesterday. Including form, sound, smell, taste, and touch, or the 4 elements, earth, water, fire, and wind. Once they conspire with our consciousness, they turn into a kind of delusion. Yesterday we said that the external 4 elements of earth, water, fire, and wind originally have no consciousness and no perception. But when they intertwine with our consciousness, when they weave together, due to the earth element, we feel hardness. Due to the fire element we feel warmth. Due to the wind element we feel movement. Due to the water element we have feelings of moisture. Actually, truthfully speaking, the 4 elements themselves do not have life. They have no perception. They are merely insentient phenomena. However, when they combine with our 6 consciousnesses, as we have been saying earlier, they intertwine, forming illusions through this entanglement. Haven't we been talking about entangled in illusion earlier? If the external earth, water, fire, and wind, along with our internal 6 faculties and 6 consciousnesses, are all entangled in illusion, when they are intertwined together, delusional thoughts, delusional minds, and erratic minds all begin to emerge, therefore in samsara, sometimes regarding our body and consciousness, and what kind of relationship they generally have. I think the Shurangama Sutra explains it very well. Indeed, earth, water, fire, and wind are insentient phenomena, but earth, water, fire, and wind intertwine with our consciousness. Actually, this intertwining is also something that upon detailed observation cannot be established, because insentient phenomena have no perception, while sentient phenomena do. These two cannot possibly mix together. But without observation, when these two conditions intertwine, we seem to have the experience of the object, as well as the experience of the subject. This is a very mysterious and confused manifestation of dependent origination. I think this is exactly the same as what we talked about yesterday regarding dreams. In a dream there are fundamentally no external mountains, rivers, great rivers, or elephants. The external environment does not exist. At that time the eye faculty does not exist, and the ear faculty does not exist either. However, the person who is dreaming can still see external elephants and external snow mountains. Any kind of scene can be seen. So what exactly is going on here? Actually, in the end, they are just confused appearances. Confused appearances can manifest in any way. As long as the causes and conditions are complete, anything can manifest. So this principle can probably be explained this way. In this way, since time without beginning, beings and the world of time and space have been tied to each other, and that is why beings cannot transcend this world. So because of this reason, since time without beginning, the world of beings, a world of beings bound by afflictions, appeared. Then the world of beings within the vessel world has never been able to transcend. Therefore sentient beings have pitifully been drowning in samsara all along. Because they are drowning in samsara, there is no way to be liberated. When Venerable Master Xuanhua was explaining this part, he said, I don't remember it very clearly, but what he roughly meant was like this. It seems a tulku came to see him. When he came to see him, he felt, how can there be a living Buddha? Then he said to him, I am going to beat you. I am going to kill you. As a result, that tulku got extremely angry and ran away. Then Venerable Master Xuanhua said, how can there be such a living Buddha? Still afraid of life and death, afraid of being beaten. This shows he must be a disgrace to Buddhism. It doesn't make sense. Actually, at that time it was probably because Venerable Master Xuanhua was not very familiar with some terms used in Tibetan Buddhism. When he was at the city of 10,000 Buddhas, he also met the 16th Karmapa. However, in some of his books regarding the lamas of Tibetan Buddhism and regarding certain tulkus and high monks of Tibetan Buddhism, there seemed to be some. He was probably a very straightforward person. He would just say whatever was on his mind. Later, his disciples directly recorded his words and audio, but I feel this was not his true intention. It is not the case that he constantly rejected the so-called tulkus of Tibetan Buddhism either, because under the circumstances at that time, perhaps at the beginning, according to his thoughts, driven by the thoughts of the Pure Land and Chan schools of Han Buddhism, he might have also heard all sorts of situations back then. He himself had not studied, for example, the exoteric and esoteric texts of Tibetan Buddhism. In this case, sometimes he would say these things, but I think our so-called tulku does not mean a physically living Buddha. Even if a living Buddha came before him, it's not certain. If he said he would beat him or kill him, and that person truly felt it, actually this doesn't mean they are truly not a Buddha. Because from the perspective of either Han Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism, wherever you look at it, even if they are a true emanation of a Buddha or Bodhisattva, in terms of manifestation, they still have feelings, they experience fear, and they have various conditions. Throughout history, high monks and great masters have always been like this. Though for some, when the great masters speak, I personally feel they must have some hidden intent. When some masters criticize other masters, we disciples at the bottom get incredibly angry. Why is it like this, my master? Actually, we shouldn't act like this in the future. These high monks and great masters, amidst magical illusions, whether they debate with each other, scold each other, praise each other, or disparage each other, we ourselves shouldn't just blindly parrot what they say. If we do, we might be generating our own personal afflictions. The true great masters might not necessarily have such afflictions. Even if they do, there is no need for us to follow suit. So sometimes looking at it, I think their various propositions might also arise from all sorts of situations. Moreover, perhaps some masters, when generally giving teachings, might also just say things casually. Some things that they find disagreeable might not necessarily withstand the scrutiny of scriptural authority and logical reasoning. But on the spot, it's a kind of manifestation, they just dislike it. For instance, if I dislike someone today, I might fiercely criticize them in class. However, my words of criticism might not necessarily stand up to logical analysis, but sometimes it might also be necessary. Therefore, teachings and certain instructional words can be used for reference, but don't hold on to them with too much personal attachment. Ananda, the Buddha tells Ananda again, what next? Didn't we just say that beings in the world cannot transcend? They remain perpetually drowning in samsara. Actually, why is it that worldly beings, once they have attachment, cannot be reborn in pure lands and cannot transcend? Not to mention our Buddhism, even in some other religions they believe their own traditions have already transcended afflictions. But because their habitual tendencies have not been severed later on, for example, some ascetics who had supposedly abandoned attachment, after hearing some singing, began to generate the habit of afflictions again. Some ascetics free from attachment upon seeing beautiful forms entered brothels again. There are others who, after tasting a certain flavor or arriving at a certain place, had their afflictions arise again. Such phenomena are quite common, so generally speaking, before the root of our afflictions, ignorance, is eradicated, in this world it is very difficult to attain true liberation. Precisely for this reason, the so-called beings and the world, this world and the sentient beings, are actually tied together. That is, they are mixed together. Why is it called beings and the world? Regarding beings and the world, actually our five aggregates as beings are entirely intertwined with time and space. For this reason we cannot attain liberation. The following explains that our 6 faculties as beings are actually united with the 10 directions and the 3 periods of time. This is one point. I feel that as we study the Shurangama Sutra more and more, it acts as a kind of psychology, as well as physiology, and even chemistry. It explores how people's 6 faculties in time and space generate various conditions. In a certain sense, analyzing time and space from our current Buddhist perspective is still quite fascinating. With this method of observation, even to scholars without any religious beliefs, we can confidently present it before them. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind, they will definitely acknowledge them. Future, past and present, they cannot help but acknowledge them. East, south, west, north and so on, they will acknowledge these too. Then what do we mean by the world? And the world and beings are actually just many causes and conditions of time and space, all completely woven together into an illusion. If we explain it this way, perhaps some of those great experts with red hair and green eyes would go, is that so? They might also quite agree, right? Some Western experts for their whole lives remain true experts. They continuously focus on one single thing, repeatedly. Here people might be serious for 2 or 3 days, or maybe a few years, and after that they are no longer like they used to be. They change. If a person is very steadfast, in that case they can truly achieve success in their studies. I also frequently see our volunteer workers and staff members here. Some of them are indeed very steadfast. Moreover, their heart for seeking knowledge, for researching and for practicing is very urgent and courageous. In this way, they may also achieve success in the future. This is very important. Let's take a look below at what I just mentioned. Now, in this text, the Shurangama Sutra sometimes explains things a bit complexly. The Buddha tells Ananda, "What do I mean by beings and the world of time and space?" You see, in beings and the world, beings mainly refers to life forms possessing the 6 faculties. Then how is world explained? The explanation of world here is something we haven't seen before. It is explained quite clearly. Time denotes flux and change. That is what time is. It actually means time. When we speak of the Buddhas of the 3 periods of time, we often use this word time. Space denotes location, which means our directions. You already know that the directions are east, west, south, north, southeast, southwest, northeast, northwest, above and below. Here, regarding space, first time denotes flux and change, referring to time. Space denotes location. Ananda, you should know what? The 4 directions of east, south, west, north, the 4 intermediate directions of southeast, southwest, northeast, northwest, plus above and below, making a total of 10 directions. We often say 10 directions, east, south, west, north, the 4 intermediate directions, above and below. Together, this is called the 10 directions. Past, future and present denote time. This is called the 3 periods of time. Thus locations are 10-fold. The aforementioned locations altogether have east, south, west, north, the 4 intermediate directions, above and below, making 10. This is what we call these 10 spaces. We have 10 directions and 3 periods of time, sometimes called 10 spaces, sometimes 10 directions. Usually we use the phrasing from the Avatamsaka Sutra, all sentient beings in the 10 directions and 3 periods of time. We often speak of the 10 directions. Then the flow of time refers to the time we just mentioned. The flow of time is 3-fold, which actually means the 3 periods of time. This is the meaning of the 10 directions and 3 periods of time. Because beings are entangled in illusion, they constantly move about in time and space, which become interconnected. Actually, as I just said, the 10 directions and 3 periods of time in our modern language are time and space. Einstein said that so-called space-time is an illusion of humanity. From the Buddhist perspective, when we observe using indivisible particles and indivisible instants, directions and time are ultimately empty in nature. They cannot be established. It is just that in our conventional practical life, the 10 directions and 3 periods of time do exist. By the same principle regarding all worldly beings currently in the 6 realms, actually our 4 elements and 6 consciousnesses, originally our Tathagata Garbha is accessible in all directions. You could say it permeates everything. But when it is intertwined with the 4 elements and the karma of beings, they are entangled in illusion. It truly has become such that the 4 elements are obstructive, and the mind possesses perception. For such a sentient being, the illusion becomes real. Once it becomes real, our bodies constantly move about and cycle, and the changing causes and conditions within the body continuously appear. This is actually what is meant by time and space become interconnected. In Tibetan, it translates to the world ultimately becoming endless. We can also explain the meaning this way. Because the conceptual thoughts of beings and various external conditions are woven together, the body and consciousness of us sentient beings, and then this world ultimately continuously flow and constantly manifest, it will always be endless. Before samsara is emptied, the transmigration of us sentient beings cannot be exhausted. Actually, what we just discussed, the 10 directions, 3 periods of time, and all sentient beings, such complex causes and conditions, when they are interwoven together, they continuously cycle and continuously perpetuate. This is what it means. Why do we say this? What follows explains this. Why are time and space linked together with us sentient beings? I read in one of the commentaries that actually our mind originally has no time, nor does it have any location. In our present moment of thought, these things do not exist either. But when we sentient beings have conceptual thoughts and thinking, once there is thinking, the sense faculties appear. Once there are sense faculties, the 10 directions and 3 periods of time also exist. They have a certain connection and continuous change, and then this all-encompassing world can appear. If we truly understood the ultimate reality of all phenomena, time would not exist, space would not exist, sentient beings would not exist, and subtle particles would not exist. Nothing exists at all. In the essence of our mind, none of these exist. However, it is just like in the sky. If it is cloudless for 10,000 miles, there is nothing. But if dark clouds occasionally appear, they will fill the entire sky. It is exactly like this. Our mind's nature is originally like the sky, but practically speaking, space and consciousness, when confused in the world, ultimately interweave to form illusory appearances. This is the principle. Regarding time and space become interconnected, this world mutually depends and interconnects, giving rise to various confused appearances, although space can be defined as extending in 10 directions, and can be clearly understood as such. Our space here, didn't we just explain it earlier? The nature of space, if it involves the 10 directions, its positions are very clearly defined. The 4 cardinal directions, 4 intermediate directions above and below. The 10 directions should be clear. People in general only take account of north, south, east, and west. For worldly people, what they can clearly determine, what they can see or witness, is east, south, west, and north. These directions are relatively clear. You see, east will not change, west will not change either. In short, east, south, west, and north are all very clearly defined. Above and below do not have fixed positions. Of course, above and below, as well as east, south, west, and north, sometimes for us too, for example, if I take a walk towards the east, in that case, the place I was just sitting has already become the west. When categorized this way, there can also be changes in east, south, west, and north. But here, major changes in east, south, west, and north do not exist. As for above and below, because they have no true positions, moreover, if you go up, no matter how much you go up, what you originally considered to be above might not necessarily be above anymore. Therefore, above and below have no fixed positions. If above and below have no positions, then the center cannot be determined either. Everyone knows that the center is very hard to define. Because above and below are a bit different from east, south, west, and north, it is even more of an illusion. This is something we can analyze later. So in this case, the 4 directions of east, south, west, and north mentioned just now are relatively clear. Therefore, we can say that space is fourfold, and time, the 4 directions of east, south, west, and north just mentioned, can intertwine with time. They can be interwoven together. In that case, multiplied together make a total of 12. Below is a calculation in 3 stages. Regarding this calculation, it seems that in various commentaries and explanations by great masters since ancient times, there are different ways to calculate it. I also took a look, and it seems that in many ways of calculating, they basically all add up correctly. It shouldn't be a big problem, but the calculation in the Zhejiang commentary on the Shurangama Sutra is slightly easier to understand. Calculating according to the perspective of the Zhejiang commentary on the Shurangama Sutra, perhaps I can explain it to everyone when the time comes. So how does it calculate here? Why does it calculate this way? I just mentioned regarding the 4 directions and 3 periods of time, actually you can multiply them into many, many more. Just like when we originally visualize the Buddhas of the 3 periods of time, and then it multiplies, then we visualize 1,000 Buddhas, 10,000 Buddhas, 100,000 Buddhas. Many, many. Ultimately, it is just like the visualization of Samantabhadra's cloud-like offerings, countless and boundless. Therefore our time and space can roughly be calculated as 12, then 120, then 1200, 1200, if calculated based on the 6 faculties of sentient beings, becomes 7200. It can be calculated this way. To explain it is relatively simple. So how do we calculate it? 3 times 4, 4 times 3. Our 3 refers to the 3 periods of time, future, past, and present. The 4 refers to the 4 directions, east, south, west, and north. If 3 is multiplied by 4, it is 12. In this case, the 3 periods of time are placed in front and the 4 directions behind. Then for 4 times 3, 4 is the 4 directions and 3 is the 3 periods of time. Whether it is 3 multiplied by 4 or 4 multiplied by 3, regardless, they are actually intertwined and ultimately equal 12. I think everyone knows this math. 3 times 4, 4 times 3 equals 12. In elementary school back in the day, didn't we specifically memorize the multiplication tables? Foreign countries do not have these things. But regarding calculation methods, foreign methods are sometimes so simple that they cannot figure it out. It's always like this. This is 12, because this 12 contains both time and space. If we calculate starting from the 3 periods of time and finally multiply by 4, this 12 is the 12 of time. If it is 4 multiplied by 3, then this is the 12 of directions. Again, if we multiply these numbers in 3 stages, first by each other, next by 10, and then again by 10. So how is this calculated? Just now we did 3 multiplied by 4, or 4 multiplied by 3, and got 12. Then 12 multiplied by 10 makes 120. Why 12 multiplied by 10? The reason for 12 multiplied by 10 is, for example, if 12 represents the directions, then there are 12 directions. We then multiply these 12 by 10. How do we multiply by 10 periods of time? There is the future of the future, the past of the future, the present of the future. Then the present also has the present of the present, the future of the present, the past of the present. The past also has these 3 periods of time, and then the present moment. These make 10 periods of time. Multiply the 12 directions by the 10 periods of time, and it actually becomes 120 directions. If the previous 12 represents time, then we can divide it by directions. When dividing, it works the same way. When dividing roughly just now, we had 4 directions. If we divide more precisely and add the 4 intermediate directions above and below, in this way taking the 12 periods of time just mentioned and multiplying them by the 10 directions, it actually also equals 120. Then this 120, if it represents directions, we multiply it again by 10 periods of time. That makes 1200. Everyone should be clear about this calculation, right? The meaning is roughly calculating whether it's 1200 periods of time or 1200 directions, multiplying by our previous 4 directions and 3 periods of time. It can all be calculated. Of course, there are many different methods to calculate this, but I think calculating it this way should work. For example, the 4 directions of east, south, west, and north. If these 4 directions are divided into 3 periods of time, there are 12. Among these 12, for instance, in the east, there is the east of the past, the east of the present, and the east of the future. Then within the east of the past, if you further divide it into the directions of east, south, west, north, and the 4 intermediate directions above and below, multiplying by 10, it can likewise be calculated into many, many more. So this method of calculation shouldn't be very difficult for anyone. It should be clear. Next it says, applying this to the 6 faculties of perception, we may measure the efficacy of each, with a total of 1200 signifying the greatest possible efficacy. So our 6 faculties are also the same. Among the 6 faculties for the eye faculty also has east, south, west, and north. This eye faculty also has the 3 periods of past, future, and present. In this case, one eye faculty has 1,200 efficacies. It can be categorized this way too. Since the eye faculty has 1,200, then the nose, ear, tongue, body, and mind faculties each have 1,200. If you divide it this way, actually each faculty has many more. Of course, later we will also discuss the 6 faculties and the perfect penetration of the 6 faculties. When it's explained like this, these faculties, the faculties of us sentient beings, after studying this, what principle is there to grasp? Actually, in this world, the physical bodies of sentient beings, along with time and space, including our consciousness, are quite complex. Analyzing it this way is very interesting. For example, my eye faculty can also be calculated this way. And since the eye faculty has 1,200 periods of time and directions, my eye consciousness can be calculated the same way. My eye consciousness can also be divided by future, past, and present. And for future, past, and present, there are also the corresponding relative directions of east, south, west, and north. Although this consciousness does not have an absolute physical location, but the entity it depends on to exist, for example, your consciousness arises in dependence upon the eye faculty. Arising in dependence upon the eye faculty certainly has the directions of east, south, west, and north. Since it does, the consciousness relying on it can also be relatively established in this way. These are all things we can expand upon. I have read many different commentaries. Some people get completely dizzy and confused here. Others find it very fascinating. Our world on the surface, oh, what kind of person am I? It looks like a person's body. But whether it is our 6 faculties, 6 consciousnesses, or 6 sense objects, if we calculate them using space and time, they are either divided into countless numbers, or not a single one can be established. In this case, this method of calculation and observation is also quite fascinating. So today we will stop here. I hope next time, with an even happier state of mind, everyone can come and enjoy this again. Today I would like to recite for everyone here a transmission of Simhamukha, the Lion-Faced Dakini. It seems I have recited this transmission once before. Simhamukha is a wrathful manifestation of Avalokiteshvara. Generally speaking, within the Terma teachings of the great Turtan Lerab Lingpa, we chant this every day at noon during our chanting sessions. But many people have not received the chanting funds, and during my first year or 2 here, I chanted it every day. But later on I haven't been chanting it, nor have I transmitted it to everyone. This is also our responsibility. Actually, some of our Khenpos, if they themselves haven't specifically chanted it, they haven't transmitted it to everyone either. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche said that, at Laronggar, especially Simhamukha, is extremely powerful for protection and averting obstacles. She protects us practitioners and averts curses that others put on you. If others create obstacles for you, all these obstacles will fall right back onto their own heads. It is such an exceptionally excellent practice. Regarding Simhamukha, I saw a photo, saying this photo is of a thangka that seemed to sell for 300 million or something. Was it Hong Kong dollars or something? It's a particularly famous thangka. Simhamukha is portrayed in such an image, everyone has probably seen it. There is also an ancient bronze statue, which is also very exquisitely made. Sometimes in Tibetan Buddhism, it seems these yidams and wrathful manifestations, some of them appear quite bizarre. But actually everyone should know, among non-human entities and such, they manifest in all sorts of forms. Like Simhamukha, among our 58 wrathful deities, when we finally pass away, Simhamukha, the vulture-faced Dakini, the tiger-faced Dakini, there are many, including the 8 Dakinis. Their faces take on the appearance of many animals. This also helps us so that when we die and these forms appear, you won't be afraid. When you die and Simhamukha appears, you will think, ah, she's the one I used to chant for at Larongar. Ah, you have come. You will be very happy.
Churnam Jojer Devjin, Rola Jebi, Yanjete, Yermerba, Homarbo, Panivaro, Danla, Yonger Kaji Transos, Ranim Kandros, Dunderma, Marmo, Sanke, Donwa, Janajati Janito, Chojang Tam, Jansam Jardan, Cheva, Shui, Churku, Yun Tota. Tapji ranjin kajang ten gora zerna kyankam gi alang ko jang par ta shem sur todor kamar nga ye wala gyana torlon ngapji toshir chang tartang ranchen ripa che me pon marna barwe hlon ornala ranjin me proxam tekar ranji yishi zan yame Tsongang sarwa yi nyangwe nyemi kirkurda vam ngam chang rakim do yung kur tsirki nibra mu vam sanga dagana honza vam sanga dagana honza vam sanga dagana honza vam sanga dagana honza.
In the middle of this, there is also a praise to her, both for averting obstacles and for protection. This mantra, the one just now, is the heart mantra of Simhamukha. The one below is the heart mantra for averting obstacles and protection. Perhaps everyone can chant this more in the future. Doing so is still very important. I saw that later there is a
Kumchok Samjib Dembadon, Kandroma Sanga Don Ringam to Nibala Ten Dozon Kudom Chibanam, Downship Jan, or Ship Go, Vartoshipin, Donam Chamiship, Choring Matam, Churloperature, Chumumbaratson, Drago Shematam, Ling Tara, Namshi Chuchi Ringam, Tio, No Shit Mali, Jevada, Johnson Eugene Japan, Shabru Tambar, Geprum Zoto.
This sadhana is currently being translated. It should be ready before the end of the year. Sometimes you can chant the Simhamukha practice on your own. Simhamukha is very powerful, especially for dispelling your own obstacles and for protection. If you need protection and to avert negativity, I don't know if anyone curses you or deliberately creates obstacles for you, or intentionally tries to frame you. Some people constantly feel that others are out to get them. If you feel someone is framing you, you can chant the mantra of Simhamukha more often. Eventually they will be scared away, they won't be able to harm you. Alright, this is in the middle of our practice. I completely didn't have time to chant this middle praise, but today I briefly chanted the mantra and the verses of Simhamukha for everyone. It should be in our Larung daily chant book. The mantra is probably there, and the sadhana is being translated right now. But the Sangha chants it quite fast.
Bandharangara Padmasada Bandharangara Padmasada